Alrighty, today I'm going to make a chowder, New England style. It's a fish chowder. Should be nice and rich, full of flavors. I'm just getting ready right now. I'm going to be frying some fish. I'm not really frying it, just cooking it to get rid of some of the moisture, concentrate some flavors. I've got some nice white fish. This is all this is fairly much on a budget here. We've got some frozen codfish, about 1.5 pounds. Some frozen bay scallops. Campbell's just started making this. It's a seafood broth. Kind of glad they did because you can buy it anywhere. Used to not be able to. And I've got a number of other ingredients, but right now I'm just going to pre-cook the fish, get a lot of the water out of it, and add a little bit of caramelization that's going to give us some really nice flavor later on when we add it to the chowder. So I don't want to overcook it. I'm just getting it to the point where it's just starting to flake, and that'll be nice to have most of our water gone. Almost need a bigger frying pan. And here we have some bay scallops. Again, we're going to let these caramelize, and if you've ever cooked with scallops to any amount, they just form this amazing sugar on the outside that just sweetens everything and gives it a great flavor. So it's important to make sure you're cooking adequately hydrated. Here's all right. So I'm just going to let these caramelize off, and we'll come back to you in a few minutes here, just because no one wants to sit there and watch a pot boil. See you in a minute. All right, we're seeing the fish start to flake apart nicely. We don't want to cook it too much. We just want to boil down some of this liquid that's come out of the fish, just because it's flavor you don't want to waste, but it can come across as a little bit muddled if you just let all that juice soak out of the fish right into the broth. As you can see, we've got our scallops over here, and they've released a lot of water, and normally I would be sending it back if a cook ever sent me scallops this way as scallops. It's just too overcooked and they get kind of rubbery. But what I'm really looking for in this dish is a lot of different textures. So once we get onto the main pot, we're going to see that there's lots of different layering of flavors and textures and sizes and stuff, just because it really is a texture experience, chowder, in addition to flavor. Just let these concentrate a little bit more, and I'll be right back.
Go.
Alright, I hope people are paying attention to how much butter I'm putting in here, because I'm not. I think at this point we're in the realm of about 1/4 pound of butter. I'm going to add some more fats, but just to keep this dish as filling as possible, we want to layer on the butter with the cream and the bacon fat. So, chowder, lots of stuff can go into a chowder. And I'm not really following a recipe I found. I looked at a lot of chowder recipes and didn't really like any of them, so I kind of took what I thought was the best from all of them. So here, I'm going to put bacon in this chowder. Here I have there's a rind-on dry cured double smoked bacon. And I believe this comes from Ontario, from my local deli here. Excellent stuff. Lots of flavor. Probably not what you want for bacon on a morning breakfast dish here, but very good bacon. Just let that render down for a little bit, and once that does, I'll be adding in onions. So I've got 2 medium large onions here that are diced to sub 1/2 inch. Not super fine dice, but fairly fine dice. And 1 rib of celery, and these are just some additional aromatics to give us a nice flavor base. I cut the rind off the bacon. I'm going to throw it in with everything here. And I left it in big pieces just so that if the rind doesn't tenderize, especially as happens in the first day of the soup, it'll be easy to take out so you're not sitting there jamming rind in between your teeth. Meanwhile, I've got these scallops and they're just starting to caramelize really nicely here on this side. You can see little brown bits forming in the pan. And we'll let those go for just a little bit longer, but that brown there is solid culinary gold from the chowder perspective. Alright, I see all my fat has gone translucent. Turn this down a little bit, and I'm going to throw in my onions. And that looks like a lot, but onions are mostly water, so they're going to disappear to a large degree. Want to be careful we don't burn them or brown them too much. A little bit of browning is fine on the onions, but we're not trying to make fried onions here. Alright, turn that off. I don't want to burn the bottom of this pan too much because I want to deglaze it with some of my seafood stock later on, just in order to make sure we get all that flavor out of there. We need all these onions to go somewhat translucent, and then we'll start on our potatoes. While we're waiting for the onions to soften, we'll talk about potatoes. I've got two kinds of potatoes here, and I kind of cut them a little bit differently. I've got the russet potatoes, and I've done little chips out of them, kind of shingle-shaped things. And the reason here is russets are going to fall apart no matter what. You're going to end up either with this round blobby thing in the middle that has all the corners falling off it, or it'll just fall apart. But we want that in there. I'm not going to use a lot of flour to thicken this. I'm going to use the disintegrating russet potato to give it the feel that it's been thickened. And then I have just a white flesh potato, so they're a little bit waxier, and they're going to hold their shape as we cook them and provide us some texture in that soup. Haven't done a lot of seasoning here. I am going to, once the stock is added, I'll add a little bit of fresh thyme. It'll get some pepper and salt to taste, but that's about it. Most of the flavor here is coming from the ingredients. Smells pretty good. Imagine this will take about 10 minutes to have everything to the point where I want to start adding stock. Yeah. Alright, we can see things have gone nice and translucent. Now we're just going to add some stock and bring it up to simmer. This I mentioned before, it's Campbell's seafood broth. It's kind of nice. It's actually really hard to find seafood broth, and unless you have a good relationship with your fishmonger and can get halibut carcasses or the like, it's actually quite difficult to come up with and find it. For that reason, many of the recipes you see actually call for clam nectar, just because that's sort of the one thing that's universally available. So I'm kind of glad that Campbell's of all people decided to make this. And and it's available in the low sodium version, I think, in the LB, which is always what you want to use if you're using stock, because it allows you to control the amount of salt. Most of them used to be all horribly salty. So we're going to let this come up with to a simmer, and when that's done, we'll add our potatoes. All right, just while it's coming up to a simmer here, just going to take and chop up a bit of fresh thyme. You should definitely have this growing in your garden. It's great for so many things. And I just pulled this out of the snow, and you can pick it almost all year round. And a couple bay leaves. We're also going to take the scallop pan that I used earlier, and just going to throw a bit of our stock in there and simmer that off, just so we can get all of that yummy caramelization product out from that pan. And I'll just get myself a little spoon. Alright, I'm going to take some of this off. I'm not really scraping it off, I'm just getting it wet. Water can do its work. Never ever waste pan drippings. Now maybe this will make sure that to make it so your chowder isn't quite that perfect creamy white that you see on the commercial soup cans, but I don't care. It's just about flavor and texture. Okay, we've just come up to a simmer here, and it's time for me to add our spuds. I had it sitting out some water. So that's 2 and a bit cups of russet. Somewhere between 3 and 4 cups of white potatoes. That's a lot of potato, but people do like the potatoes. Again, we'll let this come up and simmer, and we're going to just cook it until the potatoes are tender. By that time, we should have soaked most of the flavor of this bay leaf, and the bacon will be starting to tenderize a little bit. And, maybe time to add the fish and the cream. We're up to the simmer now. Smells great. So let these potatoes soften a little bit. Add some fish. That bacon. Like I say, this is a pretty easy dish. The only thing you can really do to screw it up, I wouldn't mix this with the red flesh fish. Stick to the white flesh fishes. Salmon will be quite a bit stronger. And about the only other thing you could do to mess this up, given what I put in here, is use a crappy supermarket bacon that's loaded with, artificial maple flavor or something like that. I definitely wouldn't do that. Stick to a small producer that makes a good dry cured double smoked bacon. Other than that, just don't rush it. Let those potatoes soften. Put in our fish and our cream. Probably about 20 minutes. So these potatoes are getting nice and tender. Don't want to have to cook it too much so they all totally fall apart. So at this point here, I'm going to throw my fish in, and you'll notice I just broke up the white fish a little bit, and it'll fall apart in the soup. Just broke it into sort of manageable chunks. So we've got our fish in here. Just get rid of this plate. Mix that in, and then I'm going to add our cream. I got a little shy of 2 cups of heavy cream here, and This is really what makes it a chowder. Potatoes and cream. Yummy. I did give it a taste. The salt is pretty good. Depending on the bacon you get and the seafood stock you get, you may want to add or not add salt. I add pepper when I serve it. But as it stands right now, I'm going to let it come back up to a boil and simmer it for, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes. We don't want to boil it vigorously, otherwise your cream will separate and it'll fall out and it'll look kind of curdly and funny. It'll still taste good, it just won't look great. If you wanted to thicken this, you want it a little bit thicker, you could add, well, probably about a quarter cup of flour whisked in with some water and stir it in and cook that out. Give you a fair amount of thickening. You don't want too thick. I don't like the chowder. You can stand a spoon up. If that's your thing, given the liquids that I have here, that's probably more like half a cup of flour or something like that. Or maybe a little bit more. You have to play around with that. But as it stands right now, this is, there is no flour in it, so it is gluten friendly, if you will. I haven't used any ingredients that have that. It's probably even, oh geez, no, the cream makes it not paleo. So if you're one of those people that gets all of their nutritional advice from Gwyneth Paltrow or somebody equally unqualified to speak to nutrition, you're kind of out of luck on some of these things. We have pork, we have cream, these kinds of things. But other than that, it's really actually pretty easy to serve to a lot of people. We'll let this come up to a boil and let it simmer for a bit, and I'll let you know when we finally have a bowl to go on the table. All right, so we've let this simmer for probably half hour, something like that, and it's pretty much done now. Now, it's a chowder, so it's definitely going to be better tomorrow, and even better than that the next day. It probably won't be around the day after that. Just to try it out. A nice big scoop. Got those fish flakes and those little bay scallops in there. Now again, this is fairly thin. You could thicken it with some flour if you chose to do so. I may do that yet. We'll see. Those potatoes, those russets should break down and give us some additional body to that soup as they cook out. So this is a little pepper. I tested it for salt. Salt level seems pretty good. And that's really, I didn't add any salt at all. Just a little bit on the fish to cook it to take out some of the moisture and whatever came in the fish stock. Oh, and the bacon, of course. And here, we'll let you see what a bowl looks like up close. Get all these nice chunks. Nice chunks and flakes of fish. And you can still see a little bit of that fresh thyme floating on top. Some pepper. So I'm going to enjoy this bowl, even though it's probably way too late to eat. But what the hell. And happy cooking.
Thank you.